And so the boy was trying to stay awake in order to protect his mom. That was his natural instinct. And so when we see these things, when we see, especially those of us who may be teachers or who work with children, etc., these are things, telltale signs that we can look out for to see if there's more going on. And it doesn't always mean there's more, but this could be something that we need to look into. Nightmares, flashbacks, these are things, children that are easily startled, they're always afraid. It may be a sign of domestic violence. They may complain of physical symptoms such as tummy aches, or even start to wet their bed. Again, I saw this in an 8-year-old girl. Very unfortunate, lovely Jamaican family, but the mom had decided to leave the dad, and the dad was larger than life figure, not only physically large, but also, in the society. And it was a big issue because now she loved her dad, she loved her mom, and she was caught in the middle. And she began to experience all the symptoms. Immediately, we resolved the issues around parents. The symptoms settled down. There may also be temper tantrums, problems with school, truancy, etc. They may behave as though they are much younger than they are, or even much older than they are. I've seen young girls trying to behave in a very sexualized way because of the domestic violence that they have experienced. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of points. They may be more aggressive, or they may internalize their distress or withdraw from other people. They may have a lowered sense of self-worth. Now, it bears mentioning here that with regards to this, boys tend to, as with many things, boys tend to behave very differently to girls. And so with low self-worth or low self-esteem, what you may find is the guy may join gangs or join groups and things like that, may stay out late, may get involved with alcohol. Whereas the other way around, the girls, while they could also join gangs, etc., but they also may just become more sexualized, they're looking for that sense of peace and belonging, and they look in all the wrong places. And so you find over-sexualized behavior or gang behavior in these children. Older children may play truants, may start to use alcohol, drugs, or begin self-harming by overdosing, cutting themselves, or have an eating disorder. The impacts on children emotionally, well, I had to mention this because in terms of how it impacts children in general. So you can have physical stuff where there's injuries, where you begin to find an injury that is not common, not normal. How does a baby who cannot walk, have a rib fracture? It's very, very unlikely. When you begin to see circular burns or injuries, usually it could be a cigarette or something from the kitchen that has caused this, we need to have a high index of suspicion and begin to think, could this be domestic violence that is going on? Or like I alluded to earlier on, where the child is complaining of just funny abdominal ache, and we've investigated and done all the tests under the sun, and the stomach ache is still there. It may just be a physical manifestation of something that is going on emotionally. Now, this one is a big one for me because I'm very passionate about children's education. There has been a strong link between domestic violence and reduced overall academic performance in children. So many papers have come up to say that they've done lots of studies on this, and they found out that most of the time, in fact, almost all the time, there is reduced academic performance in children that suffer or have experienced or have witnessed domestic violence. Of course, not in all children. There will be a lot of children who are quite resilient or who buck the trend, but in the majority is what we are saying. Also, children who've suffered from domestic violence or experienced domestic violence are more likely to be involved with the criminal justice system. They're more likely to be in jail. They're more likely to be arrested by the police. They're more likely to have issues with the law. I alluded to relationship problems previously. So children may have problems with attachment. They may have authority issues. So they're always causing problems in class. They're always fighting. There's going to be some sort of impact on them in how they see relationships because they haven't seen what a normal good relationship looks like. And so it's difficult for them to also form those normal good relationships. Obviously, like in adults, they can also develop anxiety and depression, which can in turn affect school attendance, their confidence, their educational prowess, or indeed later on in life, their ability to hold a job. There's also increase in substance abuse and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, what's the way forward? I don't have all the answers. I don't think anybody does, but there are certain things that I believe that we can do to help this situation and to really, really reduce as much as possible, especially in the Afro-Caribbean, Southeast Asian communities, which we belong to, because domestic violence happens in every sphere and in every society, both the rich, the poor, but it's often more common in Black ethnic minority groups. It's often more common in low socioeconomic groups. Your guess is as good as mine, but that's what unfortunately happens. It's like a vicious cycle. And then when you have people who have been abused, there's a tendency that they too can go on and become abusers. Remember, I said once that hurting people hurt people. And unfortunately, you then begin to see a cycle of things that happen as you go along, and it just spirals and spirals and spirals. There's a lot of papers that say, well, it doesn't always happen in all cases, but yet we know that it does happen, even if it's not in all cases. So early recognition is very important. Like I alluded to, or like I said earlier on, the longer the abuse is allowed to continue, the worse the short-term and long-term impact. So I want to encourage anyone who may be going through domestic violence, who have experienced domestic violence, or know somebody who is going through domestic violence. By the way, safeguarding is a responsibility for all of us, every single one of us. We should be our brother's keeper. So I'm not saying that we should, go and sort of be nosy into people's business. But what I'm saying is, if you know somebody who is going through this, find a gentle way of getting them to seek help. There was a particular lady from Eritrea that I spoke to once. I'm not sure if it's Eritrea or Somalia, somewhere around that part of Africa. And she would not get help. She would not get help because culturally, it was deemed to be a taboo. She felt that she would be putting her husband, in a bad light by coming to seek help. It wasn't until her children were now put in danger that things escalated beyond her control. But she said there was domestic abuse. She went to different women's groups, etc. But she would not move it any further. And so it's really important for us to understand how much of an impact this can have. Well, because a lot of people have suffered so much that they've now begin to see this abuse as being normal. As a matter of fact, some abusers are so skilled that they blame it on the victim, and they make the victim feel that it is their fault that this abuse. I've seen that happen so many. Narcissistic individuals are very good at that. They make the individuals feel that it is their fault. That is why you had to be hit. That is why this had to happen. And so we have a lot of work to do. When I mean we collectively as individuals, we collectively as a group, we collectively as a community, I believe that together we can help to free people or emancipate people or help people away from this situation. Early recognition, very important. Let's recognize it, let's identify it, and let's encourage people to seek help and advice, which is my next point. Always seek help and advice. There's lots of help out there. It's not on my slides, but there's a long list of places that we can go to. The National Domestic Violence Agency, there's a free call number up there. There's lots of women's shelters here in Manchester. In CAHN, we've got our own counseling unit as well. There's lots and lots of different help out there. Please don't suffer in silence. The third thing I wanted to say was cultural education. So abuse should never be glorified or downplayed. In Southeast Asian communities, they talk about family honor and things like that, especially when they want to do forced marriages and things like that. I have a patient in particular right now that I've been seeing them for about 4 years, and part of the problem is abuse from a senior family member. And the problem is other family members don't see it as abuse. They see it as just some cultural interplay. But we see it clearly as abuse, and it's affecting her mental health. And it's been a long journey for her to get counseling, medication, etc. For her to domestic violence or abuse should never be glorified or downplayed. I respect people's culture. I believe that practice your culture by all means. But if your culture or if the way you run your life is impacting on somebody else's well-being, then in this country, that is considered to be abuse. All right, so that's just what it boils down to. Anybody can do whatever they like. You can climb a tree and decide to go and live there. You can go around without shoes. That's your prerogative. But if your culture is going to cause distress or goes against the law of the land, then it becomes an issue that needs to be flagged up. So what we're doing today, number 4, education and training. Information is power. I believe a lot more mental health workers and community leaders should be made aware of this. And this is why I love this forum so much, because it gives us an opportunity to encourage and educate one another and really speak into the things that we see that are pertinent and are important for us to correct. Obviously, from a medical standpoint, counseling and therapy are very important. Cognitive behavior therapy, DBT, all sorts of therapy are there. Please take advantage of them. Medication is important, especially in PTSD and other somatic symptoms that may come up. And legislation. In early part of 2023, some new legislation is going to be introduced. I think if it hasn't already been introduced, with regards to domestic violence, please watch that space in terms of how it is reported and giving police more powers to be able to act on it. All right, so I believe that I've done a quick tour of what domestic, because it's a huge topic that is quite a large one for us to look at, and something that I really feel strongly about, because like I said, a lot of the abuses against women, I grew up with 5 sisters. There's no argument in my books where there should be violence against women. I don't see any reason why that should be the case, but that's just me. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. And I thank you for also just presenting it so sensitively, but also highlighting what can be done, because I think in something like this, we can often focus on all the negativity about it and get so stuck in that we can't see what is the next step. So thank you so much for that. And I'm sure some of the questions that have come through and are coming through will explore that next step of how to support people as well. So I'm just encouraging everyone to please continue to put questions in the chat. I'm very happy for you to send them directly to me if you wouldn't like it to be in the open space. And there are others watching the chat and on YouTube as well. Or if you'd like to put up your hand, please do. We'll be watching for all of that. As you're doing that, I just wanted to pick up on one of the questions that has come through in terms of, I think it's a long scenario, but there's an element of a person's sister knowing that the sister is experiencing violence at the hands of her partner, and how to approach the conversation. And that's been her biggest fear. And she's tried many times and just hasn't been able to broach it. So just wanted to get some advice from you. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for putting me on the spot, Vanessa. So this is what I was saying in my presentation. It's a sensitive topic. It's a difficult one, because most people who are being abused don't want to report it for many different reasons. Usually because the abuser is actually someone who's close to them. It's a husband, it's a partner, it's a father, it's a mother, it's someone that is you're intimate with in the first place. So it's a really touchy subject. What I will say is that there are many ways to skin this cat. First of all, find an authority figure. Find somebody who both of you will listen to. Find somebody that person will feel obliged to listen to. There was a case just a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. This woman was being threatened. Her life was being threatened by her partner, and they were both Afro-Caribbean. And we got to hear about it. And so what we did was to speak to a senior member of the community who both of them were aware of, and that person intervened. Unfortunately, the man would not budge, so we just had to move the woman out with her children. Because unfortunately, I have seen not one, not two, not three, where women have been killed, where women have actually died in this kind of scenario. So whoever is asking this question, you have to be very, very careful and sensitive to your sister, but you also need to be aware that her life, if her life is in danger in any shape or form, then you and I have a responsibility to do something about it sooner rather than later, because we don't want a situation where life is gone or limb is gone, and then we begin to regret. So that's just the reality of domestic violence.
Thank you, and it really relates to something you said earlier, you know, which is so true. You know, we all have a responsibility to safeguard each other, and it's not, you know, it's not organizations, it's not just the doctor, it's not just the nurse in the hospital,
Yeah.
it's all of us. And I think sometimes in our culture, you worry about even being nosy, like to come across nosy, that you're overstepping the mark. But as you say, there's a way of just giving that support without being overly intrusive, and finding someone that you both respect to guide the conversation. So thank you so much. Another question that has come through is about the effect on children. So and the person says that he is in her 50s. She watched her mother experienced significant violence, and then also described a history of abuse from another family member, and this has deeply impacted the person that is writing this, and just wants to know, what could the mum have done, and what support is there out there for children in these circumstances?
Okay. That's a double-barrel question. That's a good question, actually.
Indeed, yeah.
So just to be clear about the question, what could the mother have done in terms of protecting the children?
Yes, yes.
So yeah, okay. So like I said, I wear many hats. One of the things I would say that it may not necessarily relate to domestic violence, but I often counsel couples, don't fight in front of your children. That's just a good starting point before I answer the question. You see, when you demonstrate violence in front of your children, you teach your children different things. If you're a man, for example, you teach your son that it is okay to hit a woman. And then if it's a girl, you're teaching your daughter that it's okay to be hit. And it could be the other way around, etc., etc., etc. But I often say to parents, and also even in terms of verbally shouting and things like that, we have to be careful to protect our children, because they're still very sensitive, they're still growing, and they really shouldn't be exposed to certain things. I'm a firm believer that children should not suffer from what parents are going through. If we as adults decide to misbehave and mess up our lives, let's take responsibility for it. But keep the kids out of it. Those children did not ask you to bring them into the world. You went and brought them into the world by yourself. So the point is that they need to be protected at all costs. So going back to this question, I mean, hindsight is a very good, hindsight is 2020, isn't it? I could tell you 2001 things of what you could have done. But this is why, for me, I'm looking forward now to say, look, if there are people who are experiencing domestic violence, if there are people who you think are experiencing domestic violence, or if in the future you see someone experiencing domestic violence, one of the key things to do is to find ways of resolving the conflict. If that is not possible, remove that person from that place of domestic violence. It's not always possible or easy, but even if it's a temporary removal, to allow for some sort of reconciliation. And this is where community leaders, imams, pastors, etc., come into play, where hopefully there can be some kind of mediation. Even in terms of the courts and things, there's mediation out there, relationship counseling that you can go through to try. I mean, it's a complex, it will depend a lot on the individual circumstances and how things are. But in terms of the children, like I said, look, whatever is happening with adults, I feel that as adults, it's our responsibility to make sure that this does not spill over to children. And I stand by that.
Thank you. As expected, people are asking quite in-depth questions. So another question is, how do you help someone specifically with emotional abuse in cases where there are no physical bruises, but serious emotional trauma? And it's interesting. So a different dynamic here that's described: toxic mother-in-law, daughter-in-law situations. So I think that's a really great question.
Yes, yes. So some people are of the opinion that garden sheds outside were built for mother-in-laws, but I don't know. I may be wrong on that count. Now, no. On a more serious note, this is a very tricky situation that needs to be handled very, very delicately. All right. One of the cases I mentioned in the course of my case studies I gave was actually a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law situation. The problem was we tried to persuade the husband to see that his wife was going through abuse, but he just couldn't see it. And so I think the first step is to try to find some sort of middle ground. Don't forget that the reason why domestic violence is tricky is because the abuse is being perpetrated by people that know you, people that have access to you, people that are close to you. If a stranger came and tried 1/3 or 1/4 of what these other people were doing, they will be snuffed off or even taken to, but they'll be reported to the police. But because they are people that are close to you, because they are people that are related to you, it gets more tricky. And very often those scenarios are not seen as abuse. The first thing you want to do is to help all the parties, especially the daughter-in-law and her husband, to see that this is actually some form of abuse. That's the first thing. If it's a mother-in-law, it even becomes more tricky because now you're dealing with your partner's mother and not your own mother. If it's your own mother, I would say, look, talk to your mother, get her help, get her counseling, etc. But if it's a mother-in-law, look, you have to be very, very careful that you don't ruin the relationship in the process of labeling somebody else's mother as abusing you. So it has to be handled in a very gentle and soft way. But the first part is there has to be a clear recognition that there's abuse going on, or make the people understand the impact it's having on that said daughter-in-law. If they're not able to see that it's affecting them in an adverse way, it will not be looked at upon as being abuse. And unfortunately, that will continue. If it, like I said in my talk, emotional abuse is more difficult. If someone has a bruise, you can see that there's a bruise. But emotional abuse is often much more difficult to pinpoint and to diagnose. And so they may need to go to a health professional, external agencies, or even elders in the community, like I said. But if all that fails, get them to go to their GP. Let them get some external help. We can then come in as independent, unbiased people and look at the situation and say, well, this is abuse and this needs to be looked at. And that way, hopefully, that woman can get some kind of help. We've done it in the past where if a woman is being abused, we've gotten in touch with the National Women's Agency, we've gotten involved with the Women's Shelter, and social services have been involved. And we've had to take the women away from safety. There was a particular lady from, I think she was either from Pakistan or somewhere like that. She didn't know she was being abused. She was married for 5 years. She hardly leaves the house. She doesn't even go to Tesco. Her husband does everything. She didn't realize it was abuse until she was literally breaking down. She couldn't properly function. When her sister-in-law came to visit, or her sister came to visit, they brought her to the GP, and that's when it all, came about, and we had to remove her and through social services, etc. So you have to handle it gently, but if all else fails, then the authorities may need to get involved.
Thank you. And just to all the listeners and viewers, I just want to thank you for your engagement. Dr. Joe, as ever, they're coming thick and fast. So thank you, though, for everyone's engagement. So there's a reflection about how parents can be perceived to abuse children from a disciplinary and cultural perspective, and how this can also breed violence. And so I'm sorry if I'm interpreting the question incorrectly, but I think I'm understanding it as, sometimes people justify abuse to children, because it's, I'm giving them discipline. And, that's what happened to me when I was younger. I had the cane, I had this, etc. But they're not recognizing how this can be a form of abuse, but also can perpetuate violence. And just wanted to get your thoughts on that, please.
Well, I believe that children need to be disciplined. And there are many ways you can discipline children without necessarily resorting to physical violence. You don't have to hit a child in order to discipline a child. Sometimes it involves discipline. I spanked my children when they were younger. It's interesting because I would take their hand and I would do that. And I will make them know that this is why I'm doing that. When you begin to hit a child on the face, when you begin to leave marks on a child's body, that is clear abuse. All right. I don't want to put them out on on live national. One of my children did something wrong recently, and I have banned him from playing computer games for the next 1 month. I'm sure he will have preferred if I hit him. Because that is a more stinging discipline than. So the point is that we need to learn to see the world that our parents and we grew up in does not exist anymore. That world does not exist. My father caned us. There's this joke by a Nigerian comedian where a man would line up his children after he came back from work and just cane them. And they will ask him, Daddy, what did we do? He said, just in case you did anything, I'm caning you anyway. Now, that was how we were brought up. Our parents caned us just, when they felt like it, if they thought we had done something wrong, we get caned. Now, having said all that, my dad never caned us like that. My dad caned me twice in my whole life, and it was justified. The point I'm making, however, is this. You don't have to physically lay hands on children in order to discipline them. In the country where we live and in the world where we live, any mark that you leave on a child is considered to be abuse. And you have to be extremely careful that your children are not taken away. There are many ways. You can tell them, take time out, skip certain parties, remove some toys from them, make whatever you have to do. You see, if you discipline your child, see, there's a difference between punishment and correction. Punishment is when you do something because of a crime that someone has committed. Correction is you're trying to show somebody that this is wrong, don't do it again in the future. There's a big difference. When people are sent to jail, that's punishment for a crime that they've committed. And very often, even the criminal justice system is now realizing that it doesn't work. Most of them come out and reoffend. So we have to find a way to correct your child and let them see that this is something that's wrong, and there's a way in which you can move forward without doing this again. I don't want to take up too much time, but that's a loaded question.
No, definitely. And no, thank you so much. Because I think there's many on here that it is that balance of I want to show and give discipline, but getting the right balance. And so I think that was a great question from someone. So there's questions focusing on the church, and there's a couple in the chat and also privately. You partly alluded to aspects of it, but the old-fashioned mindset, but particularly in the church, that those on the receiving end of domestic violence should just get on with it. And then because of that, there's a huge lack of support and professional resource within our churches. So just people have asked just for your thoughts on that, please.
Okay, so I'll answer in a typical fashion. Nigerians answer questions with questions. So there's a young lady called Sarah. I grew up with Sarah. I met her when I was 15, left her, we were in the same school, left her when she was 18. She was in the church. Later on, I found out that she got married. We were all happy for her. What we didn't know was her husband was beating her. 3 years later, Sarah was found in her home, dead. Now, my take on this is that there is no room for getting on with it as far as the church is concerned. As a matter of fact, through CAHN, we do a session for pastors, imams, and church leaders, community leaders, what we call training the trainers. We're trying to educate people who are in positions of power, because a lot of people will not go to their doctors, but they'll go to the imam, they'll go to the pastor. We're trying to educate the pastors that they have a responsibility of safeguarding. And so if you're a pastor listening, or if you know a pastor listening, tell them I said so. Where there is domestic abuse going on or domestic violence going on, they have a responsibility to call it out. There's nowhere in the Bible or in the Quran, as far as I know. I don't know much about the Quran, but as far as the Bible is concerned, there's nowhere in the Bible where domestic violence is condoned. And so it should not be condoned in our churches. It should not be sanctioned by the church leaders. But what we have been trying to do is to educate the leaders to recognize signs of abuse and to know what to do about it, more importantly. Someone's got their hand up, I think.
Yes, I think we'll go to give the opportunity to Eziada Stella. Are you happy to speak?
Ezzy, you're on.
Unmute. Oh, beautiful. There we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me. Yeah, sorry. What I have to say, I think it's too much for me to start typing. It might take me the whole day. Actually, I had a problem in my hand, in abuse in a family, where a wife. This is now a wife abusing the husband physically, emotionally, and otherwise. They came from, let me not name the country for study, but things turned upside down with a child that has a challenge, that has a spectrum. The thing went on so much that this woman would go to the fridge, take ice water, cold water, and pour on the man when they're sleeping, with evidence. It's not just said, and then taking all things, throwing at him, beating him, that she will kill him, he must go dead, he must be carried home dead, all sorts of things. It was a long terms of abuse. It happened to come to me, because somehow I came across them and we're helping them somehow with my children for their upkeep of, they were having challenge financially and otherwise. But at some point I had to take it up to social worker because it was so much. And I could see that, this woman was really serious too. Even she said it had, because the video, she didn't know that the husband was recorded. The video, she said, I must kill you. If I don't kill you, call me a bastard. All sorts of things. So in this aspect, the country where we come from, people see things and they're afraid to speak out. I want to say that is one time is somehow what I'm making is a contribution somehow, but I stand to be corrected. But I thank God everything had calmed down and solution came that they are now living apart anyway, at least to save life. So even police had to come into it because it was so bad. So in that case, what I'm saying, is it correct for our people to keep quiet because culturally or somehow or individually we don't want to speak out, we don't want to get involved, we're afraid to be this whatever that can come out of it? But to me, I don't see anything coming out bad to anybody who is trying to bring peace or do something right in a situation that involves life and death. Please, I stand to be corrected, but I thank God, as I said, that the whole thing is sorted now somehow, but unfortunately, they said they're not gonna live together anymore. The wife doesn't want the marriage to God. The husband doesn't want the marriage to God, to the extent that the poor child has to be sent back home to be looked after by the relative.
Okay, Aziz, sorry, I don't want you to reveal too many details about a specific family, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
Yeah. All right, but I think you've made your point quite succinctly, and thank you for that contribution, because I think it just ties in very nicely with the conversation that we're having today. I'm glad that you sort of brought in the fact that for the man being abused, so we know that men can be abused as well. But what I think was really, really important in what you said was the utterances that the woman made. Now, I want to say this to my Caribbean and African brothers, and even those of us with Black ethnic minority. We have a culture sometimes of saying things that we don't mean. There's a family here in Greater Manchester that the children were removed from the home because the boy did not do the homework. And the father said in the local dialect, "I will kill you." Now, I grew up in that part of Nigeria. Parents say it all the time. They don't mean to kill their children. They don't want to kill their children. But they are saying it with the point of the fact that I will punish you quite severely. Now, the young man was brought, the teacher, first of all, he had bruises on his body. So the teacher pulled him up and he said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, you know, what did your father say to you?" "My father said he will kill me." And so for 3 years, they faced a running battle. Because if you meet this man, he was one of the most gentle people you will ever meet. But he made some utterances in anger that cost him his children and almost landed him in jail. We have to be careful what we say in anger. I'm picking up from your contribution there. Second thing is, I think you've done the absolute right thing. If, like I alluded to in my talk, if there is danger to limb or to life, you and I have a responsibility to override that person's wish, because somebody else, I think Julia or somebody said that you keep on talking to the person and they keep on making excuses. If you think that that person is in danger, they may hate you for a short period of time, but you may have ended up saving that person's life. I think one of the safest places, because another question that is linked to that is, how do we escape, or how do we not get the authorities involved? I would say go to your doctors. Your doctors are usually more sympathetic, and we are trained, at least most of us are trained, to know how to de-escalate these things without necessarily, bringing in authorities and all that. The first thing we want to do is see how we can get the family sorted within a medical setup. It's when we find that maybe there is a threat to life, etc., that's when we also then escalate things. But I think you've done the right thing. And sometimes it may mean that there's a family here that the same thing, that the young man got married, the woman was being abusive, and he was worried for his life. They're separated today. Not all relationships work, unfortunately. That is the reality. This is the adult thing. This is why I'm saying that rather than somebody dying or somebody losing an eye, let them separate. For the love of God, let them separate and let everybody go in peace. If you don't want to live with the man anymore, you don't want to live with the woman anymore, don't abuse them. Go your way. Go live your life. Go do bungee jumping or karate or whatever it is that tickles your fancy. But don't abuse somebody else's son or daughter because you are stressed out.
Thank you. And Eziada, thank you so much for your reflections as well. There's questions about signposting that's available within CAHN and elsewhere, just highlighting that often some people don't even consider leaving because they just don't have the knowledge of where they can go. And so it feeds into what you were saying at the end in terms of the way forward. And within the chat, Nandi has kindly put the domestic and sexual violence service that CAHN has, but can also signpost you for other services in your local area as well. So please do have a look within the chat and save those details, because it quite frankly, sharing those details with someone could save their life. So please, we encourage that.
Just to piggyback on that, Vanessa, one of the reasons why I like the service that we provide in CAHN is that we are an Afro-Caribbean charity run by Afro-Caribbeans. So we understand the culture. So if there are people who may be worried about sort of going to authorities or going to a GP who may not be Afro-Caribbean, then you have the opportunity of coming to CAHN and seeing health professionals who look like you, who understand where you're coming from. And that's the advantage that CAHN offers. And we can then guide you in that process. Vanessa and I are part of this of the group of doctors who provide these services for you. And so I think it's really important to mention that, because leaving a relationship, like you said, is not always an option. You may not have the financial, economic, power to be able to leave a relationship. But if you come through CAHN, we'll be able to guide you in how you can navigate that tricky situation.
Thank you so much. And I highlighting, because I can see Charles is wanting to come in, so I'll let you come in, Charles. And just highlighting the other organizations within the CAHN collaboration that are also available to provide support as well. And as Dr. Joe says, the power is that we are Afro-Caribbean led organizations that have come together to support you. So thank you so much. Charles?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Vanessa. So it's really important, and just picking on that point, and what Dr. Joe said as well, there is help available up and down the country. So yes, CAHN based in Greater Manchester, but working across the country. You've got Croydon BME Forum down in London, Enfield Caribbean Association there as well, RCCG, Royal House in Sheffield, Black Health Initiative in Leeds, and then also you've got RAFA International Development Agency in Birmingham. So there is help available. I suppose for me, one of the things we keep coming across is, like it's been said when we're growing up, if you want to hide something from a Black person, you put it in a book. And one of the things that usually grips people is not knowing where to turn to for help and for support. But help and support is available. And like Dr. Joe has been hammering on, you don't need to sit back and allow someone to die for the sake of tradition, culture, or religion before you do anything. One of the biggest things that holds victims bound and hinders them from, coming out and seeking help is immigration. But it's absolutely clear, and we have a surgery later on with the Home Office. If you are in the UK on spousal visa and you are a victim, whether you are a man or a woman, so long as you get support from an agency and it becomes known to the Home Office, there is a route to support you so that you are able to stand on your own 2 feet. Because for far too long, perpetrators have used the fact that, I'm going to, withdraw and you will be deported back to your home country. So there's absolutely no need why you should allow immigration to be that challenge. The Home Office is not a monster. Yes, they are here to protect, and they have safeguarding responsibilities as well. Before CAHN, I worked with a lady who was promised heaven and earth. She had a child back in Ghana and then came over here. When she became pregnant with the man she got married to, she ended up giving birth in a refuge because she was a victim. We supported her, and the Home Office granted her leave to remain. We've had various other testimonials, people whose child has been taken away from, supporting them through the courts. So there is help available. We should not allow it to be a stigma. And like Dr. Joe said, not every relationship, not every marriage will work. You might have the best of intentions, and sometimes timing is everything. And then quite recently, came across a particular case. I won't go into detail, but this lady wanted to give the husband another chance for the sake of, God and praying together, only for her a few months down the line to realize that he became more violent. And, she had to involve the police. But you should not go through the trauma on your own. You shouldn't allow things to fester and build until it's beyond repair. Because what we're talking about is the emotional damage, is the trauma, and how this could impact your life, even when you've come to the point you've decided enough is enough. So just wanted to chip that in. Don't suffer in silence. You are not on your own. And Dr. Joe is a pastor. I'm a pastor. I don't condone that. I will speak against modern slavery, against female genital mutilation, So there is a help out there. Just walk to your nearest by church. Just be open and honest. You can go to a mosque, you can go to a GP, and there is help available. Do not listen to any lies that you will be deported. So therefore, you decide to keep quiet and suffer in silence. So just wanted to chip that in. And thanks, Dr. Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Charles. I think that, again, a powerful endorsement of what Dr. Joe's been speaking about today. And I think adding that layer of reassurance in terms of the faith aspect, which is one of the key things that, you know, for everything, faith can be one of the biggest areas of support, but it can also shift some people's mindset to be something quite limiting. And so I think many would really thank you for that candidness. And I have got a question, because I think this is really important to bring out in a safe space like this, about someone's experience, certain difficult experiences by people within their church and church leaders, and because of that was called a witch and said her children were possessed by the devil. And I bring this out because I'm sure there are people thinking there, when they've had negative experiences of religious, you know, I call it religious spaces, organizations in any way, just any kind of words of support you can offer to this person and others who have had unfortunate experiences such as this.
Thank you, Vanessa. First of all, let me apologize on behalf of all pastors for the experiences that they've had. I don't think anybody deserves that sort of treatment. The issue is that, unfortunately, our religious houses are not infallible. Our religious houses are a work in progress. Pastors and leaders are also in need of training. And so very often you find out that in some religious circles, certain things may not go according to plan. I would encourage you to find somewhere else to worship and to find, this is why even the Bible says, be careful how you hear. You can't just go just anywhere. You know, I was listening to a gentleman, real life story. And this is what he said. He was teaching his church members that, you know, with regards to Western culture, that this is how aeroplanes are made, that they get the body parts and then they infuse it with witchcraft. And then that's why it is able to fly. A pastor said that. So the problem is not the church member sometimes. I think the problem is the religious leaders. Somebody put in the chat group, walk away from the church. I agree 100%. How can you tell people that witchcraft is what powers aeroplanes? In 20th century, this is not the medieval times. This is what you are preaching on the pulpit, that witchcraft powers aeroplanes. Come on. So this is, again, it goes back to, I mean, Charles and I have been working on this, where Pastor Emmanuel as well, where we're trying to educate a lot of church leaders with regards to many different things. It's unfortunate that people still have bad experiences, but I would encourage them to leave that environment and go to a different church where there's more enlightenment. And there's lots of great churches here in Manchester and Sheffield and in Leeds and all the other areas that we mentioned.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. I was just smiling because these are the conversations that they're difficult to have, and it's difficult to know the right spaces to have these conversations. And I think it's a real privilege for us to kind of hear it, and also directly, it's powerful when it is from a church leader yourself to say, this is wrong and it's unacceptable. And so thank you for that. And also just knowing, for people to know that not everywhere is like that. So that is crucial. So as ever, I was telling the team earlier, I always push the questions to the last minute so we can squeeze out the time. And I apologize if I haven't been able to answer all the questions, etc. And I want to highlight some aspects that, just as I type and hand over. First of all, that the organizations that are made up of CAHN, I say it again, CAHN, I say it again, Black Health Initiative, Royal Assembly Redeemed Christian Church of God in Sheffield, Rafa International Development Agency, Croydon BME Forum, Enfield Caribbean Association, all organizations that you can access from across the country that have areas of support for this. And as always, just as an example, I mentioned the Redeemed Church of God Royal House in Sheffield. The number is in the chat there. So there's help available, and so whether it's for yourself or for anyone in your family, please use this as an opportunity to share and educate and support. And I'm just want to thank Dr. Joe. It's, as everyone was saying, part of the family already. So, but whether part of the family, you deserve that thanks for taking your time this Saturday to share with us on such an important topic and offering this support in the way that is needed. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to
It's a
thank
privilege.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to thank everyone that's been listening for all your engagement. And as always, we never take it lightly, people offering their personal experiences, because your sharing educates others in so many ways. So thank you so much. And there are some really interesting comments in the chat, so I urge people to keep on top of that. Before I hand over to Michelle, who is going to do some announcements. One of the announcements that I wanted to put forward for people to be aware in the chat is that there's opportunities for you to feedback about your experiences in health research. And so I'm going to put a code in, whether if you're in Greater Manchester and we want to know your experiences in healthcare research, please do click the link that I put in the chat. 4 anonymous questions, really quick, but will really help support future interventions. And as I leave you, I'm just going to hand over to Michelle from CAHN. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Dr. Vanessa, for hosting today. And thank you, Dr. Joe, for that wonderful presentation on such an important, sensitive topic. I will be running through the announcement shortly. We'll just wait for the slides. Thank you. Thank you very much, Landy. And I'd also, like to thank all of our guests for coming today. It's amazing to have you here with us. And thank you so much for all your interaction and your questions. So today's first announcement is about our CAHN Health Hour next weekend. And the topic is getting to grips, confident care and management for beautiful Black skin. So that sounds very exciting. And I hope you can all be with us next week, same time, 11 o'clock, to join us for our health hour. And on Tuesday, the 21st of March, we will have our weekly Healthy Hearts. And the topic this week is healthy choices during a religious fast. And that starts at 6 p.m. to 7:30. And the facilitator is Dr. Hibba. And our physical instructor, Orlando Grant, will also be there doing some light exercises. So I hope you can be available to join us. To register your interest, please email events@cahn.org.uk. Next week again, next Saturday, we've got an amazing event in London. It's the London Health Festival. And that's happening at Green Towers Community Centre in London. I hope that some of you will be able to join us there. It's going to be an exciting event for all family and with lots of family-friendly activities. So I hope you can be available and join us in London next Saturday, the 25th. And do not forget that during these tough times, you're not alone. here at CAHN, we have our wonderful advocacy and counselling team delivering amazing services, which are available 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And on the screen, you can see the contact details, which you can take down and get in touch if you have any issues at all. And especially after today's talk as well, anything at all, just please contact that number. And again, we have a wonderful course that is started. It started last week, but you can still join. It's a free 10-week adult bereavement support group sessions delivered by our counsellor, Rosalind, and it's an amazing course. So if you've had a bereavement or know anybody who has had a bereavement, please do get in touch. You can email Rosalind at rosalind@cahn.org.uk, or you can email our helpline, help@cahn.org.uk, or indeed call our helpline number, which is on the screen, and please take that down. So thank you very much. And this is the service that I deliver. I did forget to introduce myself. I'm Michelle. I'm the Green and Arts Wellbeing Service Manager here at CAHN. And I've started some amazing art workshops for wellbeing and green arts workshops as well, which is all about being in nature. That is happening at our Stockport hub every Tuesday at 1 p.m. and at our Bolton hub every Wednesday at 2 p.m. If you're interested, please email me at greenandartswellbeing@cahn.org.uk. There's also a telephone number on screen. Please, if you jot it down, that's my telephone number. Get in touch if you know anybody who will be interested, or indeed if you are interested yourself. And we'd just like to thank once again all of our partners that enable this CAHN to be possible. Without them, it wouldn't be possible. Enfield Caribbean Association, RAFA International Development Agency, the Royal Assembly Redeemed Christian Church of God, Croydon BME Forum, the Black Health Initiative, and indeed ourselves, CAHN. So thank you so much for joining us today. Over to Lande. Oh, back to Vanessa, sorry. Thank you.
Welcome to our Caribbean and African targeted Health Improvement Program, CAHN Health Hour. The Caribbean and African Health Network, CAHN, along with its national partners, are incredibly pleased to continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating, and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members, and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses, and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell, and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious, and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you, and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences, and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@cahn.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions. Spread the word in our community. CAHN is funded by the National Lottery Community Fund.